It is now my pleasure to introduce to you our first speaker and moderator, Dr. Habib Zoghbi. As some of you know, Dr. Zoghbi is the president of the Harvard Business School Club in Lebanon and the honorary president of the Harvard Alumni Association in Lebanon. He is an economist, a financier, and is a member of the board of the real estate and tourism investment companies abroad. He served as a consultant for multinationals and was a senior banker on Wall Street with JP Morgan Bank. He was also a professor of finance in the MBA program at New York University and taught executive program at INSEAD in France. He is the author of 2 books and several articles in world newspapers. He also holds an MBA in finance and a PhD in economics. Dr. Zoghbi, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tatiana. Thank you for this nice presentation. I welcome everybody to this seminar, and I'm very happy to be the first speaker. It's a big pleasure for me to speak about this product, and I'm going to start by saying that this story is a story of the banking sector in Lebanon, a story of the real estate sector in Lebanon, and a story of a gentleman called Dr. Riad Obegi, who is spending his time and investing in trying to develop something new for this country that can help it to recover from the crisis it is on, and that is being innovative and creative, as very few of us are doing these days, in the hope that there will be some instrument, financial instrument, in the country that can, in fact, save both the investors, the real estate sector, and help the banking sector. And this is why I'm saying this story is an important one, because it has started a long time ago, and there's been a lot of work done on it, and a lot of progress. And Dr. Obegi, who is himself chairman of a bank, is well aware of the situation with the banking system. Being also in business as chairman of the Obegi Group, which is involved in many things from Wadi al-Akhdar to furniture selling to securitization and investment banking and several areas, is very well placed to be able to really come up with something for this country and our financial system that can, in fact, give us a boost in this very dark situation that we're in at the present time. I will start my presentation by giving you a little bit of a nutshell about the banking industry, and then the real estate industry, and then the product. The banking industry in Lebanon culminated with a lot of success in 2019. And when I say that, I'm talking about the entire banking system. I'm not talking about one bank or a few banks. There are differences between banks, between strategies, but we're talking globally. And this product we're presenting today, the CHO PRO, is a product for banks who need it. They're not a product for all banks. It is something that can be used by some of them when needed. So talking about the banking system now, without exceptions, we peaked in 2019 with big profits by the middle of 2019 and a lot of success with $230 billion in total assets and a flourishing banking sector. Unfortunately, during the past few years, just before that, the banking sector had over-invested in a lot of risky, what appeared to be risky, which is treasury bills, euro bonds, and regular lending and investments in a market that was relatively good. What happened after that, because the banking sector was overstretched and taking these risks with these products, it happened that the country itself also became in big crisis in October 17. When the crisis appeared, it was what we say in French, la goutte qui a fait déborder le vase, meaning that the banks were stretched, the products were risky, and the banks had to stop doing business for 11 days. And then they had to stop also lending, because obviously they were scared to lend anymore in the market. So the lending stopped. And at the same time, they stopped giving people their deposits in dollars because they were not able anymore to have enough liquidity to hand people their dollars or to transfer them abroad. So we got stuck in a situation where the banking system, having been exposed heavily to the government and its subsidiaries, namely the central bank, had lent to the central bank in CDs and other products the equivalent of around 80 billion US dollars in dollars. And it had lent the government directly $14 billion in Eurobonds in dollars. It had also lent the government 25 billion in Lebanese pounds, meaning at the time around $15 billion in treasury bills, which meant that all the agencies that were rating Lebanon considered that these investments in the central bank and the government, due to the over-borrowing of the Lebanese government over the years, which was over-borrowed by about 90 billion US dollars, out of which 32 billions in US and 60 billion in Lebanese pounds. That was approximately 165% of the GNP. So what happened is that the whole thing collapsed at once, starting from the government, followed by the banks, followed by the problems of our central bank. And what is happening now is that after this collapse and the basically what we call cessation de paiement of banks in dollars, banks also put a brake on the economy, meaning that they wanted to stop lending, and they did stop lending 8 months ago already. And they also decided that they wanted to get their loans back, so they pressured the clients to pay back their loans. Since this coincided with a big economic crisis, clients were unable to pay back as they should at that time. And this culminated now in a situation where our government is trying to find solutions to this crisis. One solution is the IMF loan that it is basically looking at the present time. Another solution are investments from foreigners into BOT projects to bring hard currency into the country. Other things is like our financing by certain other countries who can help us by depositing money in our central bank, and all kinds of solutions, but we're still stuck at the time and looking at a banking system which needs to be restructured, because at the present time, the government project is to give 5 more licenses to banks, which is not a very good idea at this time, because the time is for bailing out the present banks and helping them to come up and bring them new capital and see whether there could be interesting mergers between them, and basically a total restructuring of the banking system, along with a complete restructuring of our central bank, because our central bank at the present time has a balance sheet which, according to Lazard's study, has around 80 billion Lebanese pounds of losses, which is around $55 to $58 billion. So it cannot help the banking system very much. Now, some people say that because gold has gone up a lot, the price now is at a record $1,735, meaning $17 billion in dollars. And because it has still some of the banking reserves with it, amounting to around $19.5 billion, that the balance sheet is not as bad as it looks. But in the reality, just looking flat at the situation, the central bank over the next 10 years owes banks $78 billion in dollars. And that is what is now creating the problems. What it has on the other side, it has on the other side the gold, which it should not sell theoretically. This is basically a sign of last stability and last resort for our country. And it has the bank reserves, which are the property of the banks. And it is now starting to use them to import products, but it shouldn't be using them to import products. So the situation now is that we need to find something that can help the banking sector while it is starting to restructure and help it to increase its capital, because when you increase capital, automatically you can bring back loans. Because when you have more capitalization, you have possibility to lend money again in the market. For 8 months, the market has been paralyzed because there is no loans whatsoever in the market. BEMO Bank of Mr. Obegi is the first one that announced a few weeks ago that it will start to lend, but it is the only bank in the market. All others have stopped lending totally. And since all the assets of the banks, the majority of which are stuck in treasury bills and in euro bonds, which have a value now of 25 cents to the dollar, we have to find a process whereby the equity of the banks is strengthened after and during the process of their restructuring, so that it helps them if they cannot bring fresh capital and fresh money. And it is obvious that it is difficult to bring fresh capital these days, because foreigners are not interested in a country yet which is still in a free fall, and Lebanese bankers are already having problems financing the existing liquidity that they need in their banks. So that is the situation with all the banking system and the economy. On the other hand, the situation with our real estate market is very clear that in real estate in Lebanon has always been priced very, very high, because it is a small country and because there is a lot of demand for expatriates that always feel that real estate is the safest haven. As in most developing countries, real estate is considered as a prime investment because it is safe and it is not exposed to the government. And therefore, our real estate is valued high, and it is very important for our economy. And we have big investments in real estate, starting from individuals to companies to the government, which owns around $410 billion of real estate value, and for NGOs and the church and other ownership of religious groups. Because traditionally, religious groups also have owned a lot of real estate, which most of it is unused at the present time. Same as the real estate owned by individual and the government, the big majority is still unused. Therefore, because real estate is higher than in neighboring countries, and it's very precious, and it's a safe investment in Lebanon, there is a lot of real estate assets sitting with people there and not being taken advantage of, including real estate in agricultural land that's being planted, but the return of agriculture, as we well know it all, is extremely small. Same for other real estate with big surfaces. For this purpose, Dr. Obegi and this product is coming and saying, given the economy, the Lebanese economy, what we have, given the necessary restructuring of banks so that they become more sound and that they start to lend again, and they increase their liquidity besides the capitalization that they're able to bring from outside. We have to look at a capitalization of a second tier in which someone that has big real estate, not using it, or non-mortgaged to somebody, could be real estate that is agricultural land, planted or not planted, could be free surfaces, could be existing buildings, but not mortgaged and not attached by anything, that are not being used. That person can put them at the disposal of a bank that needs extra capital to be able to increase its strength and start to, with the restructuring, start to take off again and stay in the market. that real estate will be put at the disposal of the bank with a certain return a year, 3%, 4% return to be used. This capital of the bank is relatively cheap capital. It will be placed as a second tier capital on its balance sheet, and the bank can then operate more easily and give loans more easily and obtain liquidity more easily. The owner of the real estate would have to put his real estate for long term, meaning 7 to 10 years, something that he's not going to use for 7 and 10 years. He's going to get the capital appreciation, hopefully, from today, where the market is really down. Then once this capital appreciation is realized in 10 years, he will have realized also his return every year. He gets back his piece of real estate, so that he puts it at the disposal of this bank. And given the structure of our real estate in the country and the high pricing relative to other countries and relative to other products, this would hopefully boost the return of the owners. It will boost the capitalization of banks, and it will produce a situation where our market within a few months can start to stabilize and take off. And that's why this product as an innovation has to be used with only the approval of the central bank. Does not need any new laws, does not need General Assembly, which is, as you know, in most countries of the third world like us, is extremely complicated because personal interests get in, politics gets in, and this is only a financial instrument that our country needs and the bank needs, which should not get into politicization. Therefore, the central bank itself can, if it wants to really promote the capital markets in Lebanon and try to give a boost to our banking system after the quasi-collapse in the country and the paralysis of the banking system today, the control of the banking system would happen through controlling this asset also through the control commission of the banks. And the control commission would have now to look more closely at how banks are investing their money and capitalizing themselves, as opposed to how they were looking before, which were only how banks are lending and how their ratios are compared to their loans to customers, and ignoring the risk that they were taking when they were financing a government which was bankrupt for many years and buying Eurobonds from this government that is unable to honor at the present time. So this is what I had to say, this story, and now I am going to let Dr. Obegi, who is the author and who started out with this whole idea and is investing his time and money to make it happen, and we're here to help him. I will give him the word, and he's going to explain to us more about his baby. Dr. Riad, go ahead.
Thank you, Habib. First of all, I'm very humbled by all the nice things you said about me. I don't know how to be able to add something, but I'll begin maybe by saying where do we come from? Why, where did this idea come from? And it came a long time ago, almost now 15 years. And it came from a situation that was relatively similar to that one, problems in Lebanon. And there was a discussion about how can Lebanon get out of those problems without a massive injection of capital from outside. We are exactly in the same situation, except that it is much worse than it was 15 years ago. But the same idea is applicable today. In fact, we don't really need a massive injection of capital from outside because we have the capital and it is the real estate. And we have estimated how much is the real estate capital in Lebanon. And we arrived to a multiple of 20 times, approximately 20 times the GDP, which means that today we can estimate that the real estate value in Lebanon is approximately $1,000 billion. $1,000 billion, let us think about it. How much does it represent, $1,000 billion? 100 times what the IMF can put into Lebanon. So we have huge capital. Now the question is, how can we make use of this huge capital? So the first idea and the first product which is around it, we called it CHO Prime. And the idea is, well, people would be able to put a mortgage guarantee in a bank, just as they are depositing cash in a bank, and the bank would be able to borrow money against this mortgage, exactly like anybody else. Let me explain it a little bit further. So when somebody wants to borrow money, he goes to a bank, he mortgages a property, and the bank lends him money against this collateral. Now, you can also do it with the property that is not yours if the owner is lending you this guarantee so that you can borrow money. So you go to the bank, you tell this bank, well, Habib is a very nice friend and he is ready to give a collateral on his own real estate. Would you lend me money? If Habib is okay and the bank is okay, they would lend me money with the mortgage that was borrowed from Habib. So the idea is exactly similar, except that it is in a bank. So the bank would receive those guarantees from people and would borrow from other banks using those mortgages, if of course the people are who have deposited that are okay with this risk. But this was the original idea, but this original idea can work only with a legislation for several reasons. We have a legislation that is pending in our parliament, and we have little hope that it would be enacted very soon, because obviously the parliament is very busy with much more important things and much more urgent things. So we have thought, what is the immediate and urgent need in Lebanon today? If we look at the situation of banks, Habib explained to us that most banks are not lending money. We are lending money. We have been lending for a little bit more than a few weeks. We have been lending for approximately 1.5 months. It takes time, but we are ready to lend money. Now, there are limits to what we and other banks can lend, and these limits are not in the liquidity. The banks are very liquid, contrary to what people think. They are very liquid, but it is internal liquidity. They are very liquid, but they don't have enough solvency. Why they don't have enough solvency? Why they don't have enough capital? Because as they were forced to take provisions on on most of their assets, especially the assets with the government or with the central bank, it means that they have little capacity to lend money, which they have the treasury, the liquidity. So how to be able to restore the solvency of the banks? The central bank, from at the beginning of the year, asked banks to increase their equity in 2 stages. The first one at the beginning of the year and the second one soon. But this will not be enough. Even that will not be enough. So how can we do it more? Well, with the same idea, you have this real estate, there is a lot of it. Let us ask people if they are ready to take a risk that is not equivalent to a normal deposit, but equivalent to a subordinated bond. So people would give to the bank they choose a real estate guarantee that is subordinated and that is long-term. So this is the concept, subordinated real estate guarantees. There are the tenor of these guarantees would be 5 to 7 years, and it will be, if the central bank accepts, it will be added to the calculation of the Tier 2 capital. And therefore, the banks will be able to lend more easily, because when the Tier 2 capital increases, it means that they are able to lend approximately, to make it simple, 10 times what they are receiving. So let us say a bank has received in real estate guarantees $10 million, it can lend $100 million, which it has. It has it at the central bank, so it can lend $100 million. And the real estate owner is also very happy about that, because he will receive not interest, but a commission on that, that is 3-4%. And for every real estate owner knows that if he can increase his revenue by 3 to 4%, it is quite a lot for him, especially that some of those real estate are not even presently giving revenue. So this is a very big advantage for the real estate owner. No cash is required as well, because he does not have to put money in the bank, contrary to the normal increases of capital. For the banks, of course, their income would improve. The equity, even if it is in Tier 2, but the equity would be better, and therefore the return on equity would be far better. And we have made a simulation. We'll arrive to the simulation. You have received it, but we'll arrive to the simulation. So in order to simulate, to see what can it give, we made a little model based on 3 banks, 3 medium banks. You will pardon us because we took among the 3 banks BEMO, but we tried to be very fair. So we took those 3 banks and we tried to evaluate what would happen if on those 3 banks we increase only equity or equity and the CHO. And we're very prudent in our estimation. So we, in the first scenario, we considered an increase of Tier 1 capital of $60 million. In the scenario 2, we considered an increase of the same $60 million plus an increase of $60 million for this CHO Tier 2. We made a number of assumptions. We considered that the interest rates would be low and would stay low during the entire analysis period, which is a logical assumption. I think that the interest rates, maybe in Lebanon, might increase once there is it is free, but we think that in the world, because of the COVID, the interest rates are going to stay low for a number of years. We made another assumption that the economy is running below its capacity, and people who are moving around in Lebanon know that the economy is running well below its capacity. And when I say well below, I think that we are probably at 30% of our capacity. We considered that the different ratios are not going to be different from what they are. And we considered also that all other things would not be different from what they are. So doing those estimations, doing this simulation, we arrived to a difference in the profitability. So in the first case, the profitability was on the period of 3 years of examination, we arrived to an increase of revenues of $10 million approximately, which is very normal. You increase your capital and you have a capacity to lend. You are the market is accepting this lending. Then logically your profits should increase, and 10 million is a very logical figure. And in the scenario 2, when we did it with the CHO, well, the profits were 30% higher. And this should not be also surprising, despite the fact that we were extremely prudent in our simulation. But is it the only advantages that we found out? No, there are other advantages, but we will have also an improvement of the situation of the bank, apart from the fact that profitability is increasing. We have also if this is implemented in Lebanon, we have also the possibility for this instrument to be promoted and implemented in other countries, which is also an advantage for Lebanon. So we hope that the central bank, which is alone to decide such a thing, we hope that it will accept our proposal. We intend to meet the governor very soon to propose to him, because we think that it is really very important to resume the activity. We believe that no economy can work with banks that are reducing their lending. We believe that in such a situation, in the contrary, banks should increase their lending, and they cannot increase their lending if they are not able to increase their capital. We don't think it is very reasonable to believe that people who are sending their money outside of Lebanon will be very eager to bring back their money to Lebanon if they don't have something that is very attractive, and this would increase the attractiveness of investing in banks. So this is in a nutshell. I know that I don't have too much time, so I thank you all for your attention, and I will leave Emmanuel to continue.
Thank you so much, Riad, and thank you so much to all of you. I just have one question. How can we apply the CHO Tier 2 and which investors?
This CHO Pro, as the name indicates, is for qualified investors. It should not be for anybody, because in fact, there are like people who are buying subordinated bonds. They should know what is their risk. It should not be for anybody, contrary to the CHO Prime, which is just like a normal deposit, open to anybody.
Yes, but Habib, you said something very, very interesting. You spoke about religious groups, and I was thinking about, you know, Vatican. Vatican could be the perfect target for this product. They are full in real estate. We know that, but they don't have any cash or liquidity. So my point is, do you think that institutional investors could be the right target for this product?
I totally agree with you. I think that you spoke about the Vatican, the churches.
Yes, it was just.
And I agree with you. I think that not they are the perfect target, because I don't like targets. But there are probably the good times for that, because it provides them with a good on assets that are almost unused.
Yes.
So yes, I think that it would be very interesting. And by the way, I will tell you, something that happened maybe 2 years ago. I was making a presentation about the CHO prime, and there was the rector of a school, of a religious school, who was saying, this is very interesting for us because we are short of just that amount. We have a lot of real estate. If we could get 1% of this as revenue from this real estate, it would cover all our deficits.
I totally agree with you, and the same for family offices. Big family offices have this this issue sometimes to be unable to maximize the revenues for their portfolio of real estate investment. So it could be a great idea. Okay. I have a question too regarding guarantee. Could you describe the mechanism of guarantees?
It is a very normal mortgage, except that it would be subordinated. You know that the guarantees, especially the real estate guarantees, are something that is very well used it has been used for hundreds of years. It has to be just subordinated to the other liabilities of the bank. And for the period, there is also one thing that has to be precise, is that at the end of at the maturity, then the guarantee is free, except if the authorities that are supervising that refuse the freeing of this guarantee. So it is a normal guarantee, a normal real estate guarantee, except for subordination and the fact that people are released once we arrive to the maturity and the central bank accepts that it is released.
I understand, Riad, but correct me if I'm wrong. What about the annual fee that the borrower is supposed to receive? How do you calculate this annual fee?
It's not the borrower. You mean the person who is providing the...
Yes, sorry.
The fee, it is going to be just like in everything. It is going to be a negotiation between the person who is providing the guarantee and the bank.
Yes.
In my opinion, the real estate guarantee is going to have the revenue of it will be probably 2-3% below what a subordinated bond would give. So if a subordinated bond would give 7-8%, then this would give between 4 and 5, maybe 3. But probably the negotiation power of the banks would be stronger in that case than in the case of subordinated bonds, because people are not eager to put cash in banks today, but they have a lot of real estate, much more than they have cash to put in the banks.
I understand. So it means it's like, I mean, this fee, it's like a gré agreement.
Yes, it is gré agreement, yes.
Perfect, very clear. Thank you. Just question number 3. Could you please come back on your presentation, and I would like to comment your assumption, you know, apart from the loans, we will not evaluate the other effects of the use of the CHO PRO. Could you please be more specific on that?
Yes, of course, there is the advantages for banks. There are the advantages for real estate owners.
Mm-hmm.
There are advantages also for the economy. In our simulation, we said, well, it will allow banks to lend X more. And since we are under capacity, whatever banks will be able to lend more is GDP, extra GDP. Why? Because there is a very strong correlation everywhere in the world between the the growth of loans and the growth of GDP, or decrease in loans and decrease in GDP. This correlation, of course, there are periods where it does not follow exactly, but on the long term, it follows almost exactly. So if banks are able to lend more, thanks to this instrument, then GDP will grow. There are also other advantages, such as the fact that there will be an improvement in the price of real estate. As Habib was saying a little bit earlier, real estate owners will have, with this additional benefit, not for everything, but for even a part of the real estate owner having higher revenue, their assets be worth more. And just by contagion, other assets will also increase in value. So you have an advantage on the economy, an advantage on the real estate sector, an advantage also on the financial sector, because if banks have received this, they are safer. Even if whatever the profitability, they are safer. So this is a few of the advantages. There are probably more, but these are the main additional advantages.
I understand. Just one question. Do you confirm that the assets are, I mean, could you please describe the assets eligible for the CHO Pro? It means, could we use parking, lands, retirement homes, why not school, or, you know, what type of real estate can we use, can be eligible for this product?
Whatever, it's just like a normal mortgage. So whatever assets can be mortgaged, the same will be can be used as the CHO Pro. So it can be, as you mentioned, schools, lands, offices, retirement homes, whatever asset can be mortgaged. So it has to be free. It should not be. There should not be a problem on the property. There should not be already a mortgage. So whatever can be mortgaged can be inside the CHO Pro.
That's very interesting. So again, I'm coming back on the introduction made by Habib. Imagine a big private equity fund specialized in real estate coming to your bank and asking for the CHO Pro. It could be very interesting and can generate a lot of money for the bank. You know, these big institutional players, from our point of view, could play a big role for the future. Not only the private clients, but the big one, the big institutional players. Do you think it could work?
Yes, I'm sure it could work, yes. I think that those institutional players, yes, certainly it increases their return on equity. So yes, I'm sure that it would work and it would be advantageous for them.
Yes, even if we have this, I mean, this shadow agreement, I mean, gray agreement, because big institutional players, they love regulation and so probably, and we are coming back on your introduction, we need the politics involved in that product, because if we have a law, a real framework for these big players, because they love transparency and so and so, how do you conceive that?
The regulations are going to come from the central bank, not from a law.
Yes. Yes.
And this makes it much easier, and this should reassure those institutional players who like regulation. And I don't think that it is, because it is qualified investors, I don't think that it is going to be under the protection of the normal investors. It's going to be for qualified investors.
Yes. So that's very interesting again, because the role of the central bank is crucial.
Yes, certainly. Yes. And I think that not only they will have to make a regulation, but they will probably have also to agree with the international institutions who are setting the standards to put the necessary regulations for the banks.
I understand, but probably it will be the purpose of a new seminar, because it's very fashionable to analyze the central bank as an object of regulation. It means, how can we regulate central banks? Because there is a lack of transparency. We don't know how it works really. We don't know in deep the mechanism of a central bank. So the product could bring as well more transparency on this aspect. Okay, I understand. I read the question. Yes.
On the central bank.
Okay. Probably a taboo.
No, it's not taboo. But frankly, I don't know much enough about how the central bank is internally regulated. I know that they are giving us a lot of regulations.
Yes.
And the regulations we are receiving from them are usually well thought of. But how they are themselves regulated, I don't have a clear idea. Okay,
no, that's good. I'm going quick now. Just probably the last question. CHO, and we love this. CHO Tier 2 is really an innovative product, but for frontier market or for old rich countries? That's why I spoke about Italy, but we don't know. It could be perfect for frontier markets, but for the old country as well, for France, because we are full of real estate and we don't know how to use it to increase the valuation of these assets. So how can we start and implement?
I totally agree with you. I think that for the CHO Prime, certainly it is more destined to developing countries. On the other hand, for the CHO Pro, it can be interesting for any country. And if I look at France in the present situation, I'm sure that banks would love to have a Tier 2 capital that is not too expensive, because they are receiving free money from the central bank. The central bank is telling them, lend as much as you can, because we want this economy to restart. Yes. But they don't have necessarily the solvency. So even for a country like France, it could be interesting. But for countries like Greece, like the south of Europe, it is extremely useful.
Perfectly understand. So that's all for me, because we will let the public ask questions.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Riad, thank you so much, Habib.
Thank you, George Emmanuel. Thank you, Riad. I just would like to put in a poll right now to see what people thought about everything that we talked about so far. So if you could just show the questions on our poll now, and I will ask all the attendants to please answer this poll, so it could be useful to know how well this product is being received by the audience. Can you put this poll on at the present time on the screen, and everybody please, if you can answer the 3 questions that are on the poll.
I saw results before. I don't understand.
Okay, so let me just now see a couple of questions from the audience, Fadwa Darwish is asking us in which currency the lending will be, in dollars or Lebanese pounds. I think that we have to clarify the concept of lending here, and we're talking about basically the fee being paid by banks for the real estate, meaning the 3 or 4% yearly fee on its valuation of the real estate. That's what I think Fadwa means. That's how I understand it. And I think that the agreement could be done between the bank and the real estate owner as to how they want these to be paid, basically, and the valuation of their land to be done. In general, in Lebanon, we deal in Lebanese pounds, but it could be also agreed, just like banks in Lebanon lend in dollars and lend in Lebanese pounds, just like they take deposits in dollars and take deposits in Lebanese pounds, they also can deal with this situation in both currencies. But I think that the author of the product, Dr. Riad, is going to maybe give us more of his insight on this question. People are worried a little bit about their exposure in Lebanese pounds, I suppose, and they are right.
So the question, in which currency is the CHO going to be nominated? I think that it will be a decision by the central bank, and this decision is very subordinated to the fact whether we are keeping one currency, two currencies, three currencies, I don't know how many currencies, because today we have in Lebanon 3 currencies. We have the fresh dollar, we have the non-fresh dollar, and we have the Lebanese pound. Personally, I would choose the local dollar as the currency, and I would choose the local dollar as the currency in which the CHO would be nominated. But it's not up to me. It is we can do whatever the central bank wants to do.
Okay, let me handle the second question. The second question is from an anonymous person who's asking us the duration of the assets of the mortgage. And I think Dr. Obegi mentioned 5 to 7 years. And I mentioned that this has to be a long-term play because the bank does not want to get in and out with documents and papers all the time and has to know that this is for a while a tier 2 capital. In fact, it's capital for the bank. It increases its strength and its financial resilience. So I would say Dr. Obegi said 5 to 7, and this is his product. And I think that it can go up to 10 years, depending on, obviously, the longer it is and the higher the interest rate will be, like in a bond situation. In general, rates are higher, the longer term is the product, whether it's a subordinated bond or not. So the basic product is 5 to 7 years, but this can vary, I guess. Maybe Dr. Obegi also can tell us something about this.
I totally agree with you, Habib. It will be between 5 to 10 years. Less than 5 doesn't make sense. More than 10 years, it is difficult for people to commit for more than 10 years. So I totally agree with you.
Okay. There is a question from Bassam Anaisi. The liquidity is held by the central bank, which cannot make it available. So it appears that the real estate proposed by CHO would have to be auctioned at the moment it is deposited. That's number one question. Number two is, how can the bank start lending when their money is held by the central bank? And I think that Riad, you answered this question more or less. The second one, for sure, you answered it. The first one is also about the central bank. I think that you can answer this first question. Shall I reread it for you?
Yes, please. I like to hear you, so yes, please.
The first thing again is the liquidity is at the central bank, he's saying. Well, yes. I'm not sure there's too much liquidity at the central bank at the present time, but there is enough to be able to supply to banks whatever is their own money deposited over there and not yet at maturity. That is key, because We have CDs going up to 10 years with the central bank. So he's saying, so it appears to him that our real estate proposed by this CHO has to be auctioned at the moment it is deposited. Auctioned, you mean, I guess he's saying that get cash for it and then be deposited, which is not what we're discussing at the present time.
No, I think it's the purpose. We are saying that banks have a lot of liquidity. Now, the person who is asking the question, Bassam, I think, right?
Yes, yes. He sent you his regards also. Okay.
Bassam thinks that this money is not available because it's not available outside of Lebanon, but it is available in Lebanon. And we are talking about lending in Lebanon. So through this liquidity that the banks have cannot be used for transferring outside, but they can be used to invest inside. And I'm talking here to the PhD in economics. You know that if we lend money, this money will come back to us and we'll be able to lend it again. So it's not going to get out of the system. So there is ample liquidity, no worry about it.
Okay, so that basically that the problem is that we don't have dollars available abroad anymore because our reserves has went down, but whatever is in the system is in the system, and we have an interest in make it churn in the system and try to make the economy really move instead of being really paralyzed as it is today, and have basically a multiplier effect take place when we lend money, and it will automatically take place. And that multiplier effect will really give some vigor to the economy immediately. So even though our central bank is stuck at the present time, the banks are not obligated to be stuck in the same way, and they can use whatever they have to make our market move. The second question, the money is held at the central bank, he's saying, so they cannot lend it. And I believe that if they have their line and their availability at the central bank, it's within the same circle, and they can start to move the economy.
Absolutely. The of it is in current accounts at the central bank, so no, it's not stuck at the central bank.
George Emmanuel, you have any comment about this?
No, I was just listening. You know, again, the role of the central bank is, you know, probably the corporate governance of the central bank would be the key issue. That's my point of view.
Okay, yes, it makes sense. The next question is from Salah Hijazi. He's saying, how could we minimize this risk? Will there be what is called in French some garde-fou to minimize the risk? I guess, Salah, you're talking in terms of risk that if you need your real estate back at some point, if there is an option in this deal whereby you can pay a penalty to the bank and get your real estate back because you need to sell it or to give it to a relative if you're an older person or something like this. So that the minimizing of the risk has to take, in my view, which bank you're doing the CHO with, because if it's this bank is restructured and knows where it's going and has a plan and is starting to be back on the right track and is one of the solid banks in Lebanon, then your risk automatically is minimized by your choice of the bank where you go. Just like when you go to borrow from a bank, you want to get the lower interest rates possible. When you go to deposit at the bank, which is what you're doing here, you're depositing your real estate, you want to go with the safest bank, not essentially the one that gives you the highest return. And obviously the bank with whom you feel comfortable. So I think that this is how you minimize risk, with an option to get out and with the kind of bank that you have and the currency that you choose, of course, even if you have lower return on it. You know, it's up to you now to evaluate how currencies are going to move over the next few years. If you want safety, you go for dollars, you get lower return. You want risk, you go for Lebanese pounds, you get higher return. And Dr. Obegi, I think, may have also some different risk options, reduction of risk options, where maybe we can have some warrants, some options issued in the market here, in the capital markets, since Dr. Obegi is also in the securities issuance industry. He is chairman of a subsidiary that does securitization, which is basically something new also in Lebanon, to be able to liquefy certain debt. And they are one of the only active ones in Lebanon in securitization. So he might have also different ideas. I would like to hear, Dr. Obegi, what you can tell us about this.
Eliminating risk is not possible in any case in our world and in Lebanon especially. But one should try to reduce risk while increasing the revenues. If you go to a good bank, if you and you get appropriate return, I think that you are not increasing your risk too much. And by the way, we are talking about qualified investors, and we are talking for increasing the tier 2 capital. So let me take a little scenario. I'm going to say that Habib owns a bank, and he has now he is considering increasing the capital of this bank. He can ask people to come and put money in the bank in order to increase the capital. They are taking a very big risk, and they are bringing money either from inside or from outside. So it's not going to be very easy, but possible, because we saw when the central bank asked banks to increase their capital this year, most banks increased their capital. So still possible. So if Habib goes and sees those same people and tells them, well, you have a property, a real estate that is somewhere that you are not using. What about instead of taking this, putting this money in the bank as capital, what about giving a real estate guarantee? I think it will be easier, because people have much more real estate than they have cash. And if Habib thinks, what about me? If my bank goes bankrupt, because the risk is his bank going bankrupt. If my bank goes bankrupt, according to the regulations in Lebanon, they'll go after my real estate. So why not I put it immediately into the bank as a real estate guarantee? I will get a revenue, and my risk has not increased at all. So for Habib, it is very interesting. I'm sure that it will be far more easier to get those guarantees than anything else to increase the capital of banks.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Riad. I have 3 questions here that basically come down to the same idea. Basically, it's what happens to the real estate if the bank goes bankrupt, from Mrs. Laura Lahoud, and other 2 questions that the same, basically, that clarify the risks to the owner when he does such an operation. Well, you know, the risk is if the bank goes bankrupt and all the capital, the initial capital of the owners is wiped out totally, then you get back to the 2nd tier capital. And that's when the bank starts to have to put their hand on your real estate after it is bankrupt, and after the owners of the bank have basically put in their basic capital and their personal assets if they need to, because the law in Lebanon says that the owners of a bank and the board of a bank are responsible personally for all the financial problems of any bank. They have to put in from their own money. So the risk is there after basically the owners and the tier 1 capital. But there might be another risk potential if the bank refuses to give you back your mortgage, if they are basically voyou bank, you know, they are illegal and their mortgage is stuck. But I don't think that that is going to ever happen with a heavily regulated industry like banking, even in Lebanon, it's very, very heavily regulated. Our central bank is extremely tight on things of this kind and has a very large department of control of banks and has 1,800 employees to control this, when in Switzerland they have 800 employees in their central bank. So I don't think this, the third one, is a big risk. But there might be, honestly, other risks. I would ask Dr. Obegi and George Emmanuel to clarify it for us if they have any possible risks that they see in this.
I leave George Emmanuel answer first.
You know, the question of risk, especially after the big crisis in 2008, is always the same. It is systemic risk. And this issue behind our product is the risk of securitization. You know, this is what investors are. I mean, they are extremely cold on that because they are afraid to lose not only their money but the transparency of the money. In fact, so I think that the presentation was very clear. As we have a legal framework, risks are really low. That's my analysis. We are quite sure that the bank will increase his ratio, but will minimize the risk because the assets are really under control.
Okay, very interesting. Yes, very interesting. Dr. Riad?
So about the risk, it is the risk of the bank going bankrupt. I saw one of the panel, one of the attendees who is saying a deposit guarantee. Well, the deposit guarantee does not work for the tier 2 capital, so it would not work. It is only the fact that one should not put too much in it. And I saw what Zenaro, I would like to thank for her trust in BEMO. She's saying, well, one should put only real estate that is not very crucial for himself. Yes, I totally agree with her. If one puts real estate that is not too crucial for him, then it is okay. The risk is the bankruptcy of banks. Yes. And there is, I think, much more available real estate that can go into this instrument than that there is cash that can go into subordinated bond. So there is risk, but there is much more available investment possible.
Okay, now the next question is about where can it be used, and it is boosting the economy, it's helping the economy. Which countries can benefit from this, and what have we done in other countries for this, for boosting the economy of other countries? We know about Lebanon. Certainly it can help some other countries, but I know that Dr. Riad has been active in different countries also. He has not been working only in Lebanon in this, even though his priority is Lebanon for sure. But maybe he can enlighten us about any other countries working on and doing this over there.
We have another country where there is also a draft law in South America, but today we are giving full priority to Lebanon.
Okay, I think that we should close because we spoke about several things. There was a question by Zaina Karam. Did you see this question somewhere? I've seen it here. Let me just check. There is a last question that has been there. I can't. Do you see it?
I will take BEMO as a risk only. This is the only thing I see. Thank you again.
Yes. No. Ms. Zena Karam also is asking, you know, how can we judge if bank is going to be bankrupt beforehand, etc. Well, I think I said that the bank has to be restructured, has to have sufficient tier 1 capital. The bank has to be on its way with a good plan. The owners of the bank have to be solid. That the bank has to have been in business for a long time, has to have trust from people. We've said that definitely, and we know that the owners are behind it, and they have their tier capital 1, which is exposed prior to all of this. But obviously, there is a risk, and that's why this has to be done when the banking sector is starting to take off after the country has taken the first monies in that are going to jumpstart the economy. And then after a plan has been put in place with different monies coming in from institutions abroad, from the S.A.L conference and from some others. And then this will help the banks and the country take off at that point in time. And one has to choose one of the best banks in terms of their restructuring and their capitalization. And in that situation, the risk is very much reduced, I think. So I have to thank everybody for being there. I hope everybody enjoyed. I would like to let George Emmanuel and Dr. Obegi say goodbye to the attendants and hope that they liked what they heard. And they can be sure they will hear more from this product, because Dr. Obegi is here to stay and to make it happen. He's not here to keep it as theory, for sure. So that's going to be applied pretty soon in Lebanon, and we have to all wish him the best of luck for this. We try to make the picture as clear as possibly can from the viewpoint of the economy, the banks, the owners, and the benefits to everyone. And I hope that the message has been clear. Dr. Riad, please.
George Emmanuel, would you like to say a few words first?
Yes, thank you so much to all of you. And we appreciate a lot this moment together, and we love financial innovation. So I hope we will meet again very soon.
Thank you. Before I conclude, there was a question, if somebody wants to sell his real estate, can he do it yet? It is the same as if a property is mortgaged. We can sell a mortgage property, although it happens very seldom because people are not happy to buy a mortgage property, but it is possible. Nothing prohibits that. Now, if the bank goes bankrupt, of course, properties are going to be sold because this is the real estate guarantee, and the properties are going to be sold at a discount, certainly, because it is a forced sale. So there is a loss, certainly. Now I'm going to conclude. I thank you all very much for your listening, and I really hope that this will happen not only because it is a urgent need for Lebanon, but because also it is a fantastic opportunity for Lebanon to have introduced in such a difficult situation an innovation that can be useful all over the world. So I don't know how to hope more than what I'm doing, but I really hope that it happens, and it depends only on a decision on the central bank. It does not depend on a lot of things. So thank you again, all of you. Thank you, Habib. Thank you, George Emmanuel.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Bye.
See you very soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.